Alright, so moving on to the next video now. Does The Force Awakens hold up? Like, at all? We'll find out. We'll find out. This guy has done pretty funny videos in the past. I'm hoping this will be entertaining too. Alright, so we'll begin now. 3, 2, 1, go.
I don't normally do anniversary videos like this anymore, since giving myself a rigid deadline kinda stresses me out. But I wanted to make an exception in this case because this feels like an incredibly momentous and fascinating event. Star Wars The Force Awakens was arguably the most anticipated film of the 21st century thus far. Coming off of the
sure felt like
wildly
it, didn't
divisive
it?
prequel trilogy that didn't exactly give a lot of classic Star Wars fans their nostalgic fix. Here was a true successor to the iconic and beloved original trilogy. One that sought to continue the adventures of cinematic icons we hadn't seen on screen since 19...
Yeah, I remember that. Gosh, I remember the lead up to the Force Awakens release date. I was working. This is gonna make me age 500 years, but I was working at Blockbuster at the time, and my managers, a married couple, they were huge Star Wars fans, absolutely huge ones, and unlike for like a week after the first trailer came out, they will play the trailer nonstop on the TV's display at work. And yeah, that's right. This YouTuber Shafralaz, he uses the crab as like his icon avatar thingy. Let's continue to see what he has to say here.
83. Here was an opportunity to return Star Wars to its roots and finally service the fans who hadn't been serviced in a long time by striving to recapture the classic magic of Star Wars above all else. I wonder if you picked up on the red flags I was putting down in that write-up. Yeah, the truth is, the legacy of The Force Awakens and the entire sequel trilogy is complicated. These are films that started out generally pretty liked by the vast majority of the fan base, only to now be just as divisive as the prequels were in their day. While the prequels are currently living it up in the lap of luxury, since they've largely been redeemed in the eyes of the general public. Much of the reason the sequel trilogy is derided to this day is due to the final two installments, The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker.
Oh yeah, these two bad movies, both of these. That's a bit disappointing too, isn't it? I didn't think Force Awakens was bad at all. I really liked it. But yeah, these two were pretty disappointing in a way, weren't they?
Since they follow up on the narrative threads laid out by The Force Awakens in somewhat unpopular ways. Everyone pretty much traces the source of this trilogy's issues back to the fact that they didn't have a plan for how the narrative would unfold when they embarked on the endeavor of making them. But that begs the question. So much of the discussion surrounding the sequel trilogy revolves around the choices made in Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. But where does that leave The Force Awakens?
Especially Last Jedi, right? You only remember 6 films? Well, yeah, there's the original trilogy, of course, and then there was the the prequel trilogy, what detailed how Anakin became Skywalker, right? And then starting in 2015, they had a sequel trilogy about showing what happened after the events of the original trilogy. And results are the most polite way to put it are highly mixed. Highly mixed.
Awakens, exactly. What was once the most anticipated release in the series, and to this day, the highest grossing Star Wars film of all time, is...
Wow, how much did it gross? Wow. And like, what, sixth place overall? And then what a shame. I know, right? Oh, I gotcha. Alright.
Is now arguably the least talked about installment in the Skywalker saga. Because not only is there not a lot to say when compared to its successors, but there isn't a lot that makes it stick out in the grand scheme of the saga for one simple reason. By design, it is the most derivative Star Wars film. I still say the people who call this a shot-for-shot remake of A New Hope are straight up wrong. It obviously switches a lot of elements around, but it is the only beat-for-beat remake of a previous installment. While this frustrated a few fans at the time, others, such as myself, acknowledged that this was a more than reasonable way of just laying the groundwork for a new era with new protagonists.
Yeah,
and the next
that's what it should have
installment
done.
could take things in a more unique direction. Boy, did it ever. But now that we've seen the full trajectory of the sequel trilogy, and now that a lot of the mysterious questions The Force Awakens initially raised were answered in rather unpopular manners, what's left for The Force Awakens now? What does this movie have after 10 years? Well, that's the question I'd like to answer today.
Think,
Divorced
Mark,
from the
think.
context of it being the well-publicized return to form for the Star Wars series a decade ago, does the
Oh no, oh no. I think Wolf's about to be let loose. Okay, but that is true. How could they have spent millions, on a movie and not have a plan for it? No, no, let out your inner nerd. The world needs to see it. Because I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan myself, but even I can understand the gravity of it all. Yeah, having a mystery box scene was just a big mistake. Yeah,
Force
yeah.
Awakens hold up nowadays? Like, at all? To answer that, I want to briefly ignore the larger implications this has as a piece of the Star Wars saga, and just ask for a second here, is this a good movie? Like, on its own, how does it hold up from a writing, acting, directorial, etc. perspective?
Well, before I answer that, I'm just kind of bummed at how expensive going to the movies is now. They were so much cheaper 10 years ago! Everything was so much cheaper 10 years ago!
I know,
Personally,
right?
I'm trying to find new ways to save money and
Yeah, I
optimize
keep wanting
my
to go to the
spending.
theaters, but
Not
it's just
sure
too
if anyone can relate
expensive.
to that. If you can, then today's sponsor, Rocket Money, is here to help.
Ad!
Rocket Money is an
Oh no, we
easy-to-use
got
app
an
that helps
ad.
you save more and manage your money better. As someone who has trouble staying on top of managing my finances, Rocket Money makes it simple by providing a single, high-level view of my finances. I don't have to log into several accounts anymore just to stay up to date. It's all thanks to Rocket Money's great bird's-eye view of your finances in a single app, with both high-level and in-depth account insights. And don't even get me started on all those free
We're all
trials I
patriots
forgot
in
to
this
cancel
house.
before I
That's
got
right,
billed.
that's right.
Luckily, Rocket Money is a great way to stay on top of the subscriptions I have, and it can help cancel them with just a few taps. It saves a lot of time and hassle of canceling them myself. Go to rocketmoney.com/.
That's pretty good. When I want to watch something deep, I watch a film. When I watch something to shut off my brain, I watch a movie. That is so true, absolutely right. A New Hope is a film. The Force Awakens is a movie. Very, very good distinction there, Pikachu. Spot on.
/Frillis to start your
And what's
free
higher than a film? Cinema. Like Lord of the Rings. That is cinema.
premium trial. You can also scan the QR code or click the link in the description. That's
Rocket Money.
rocketmoney.com/JFrillis. Now back to
70 Black, let it
whatever I
ride.
was talking about. I don't remember. It's been 10 years.
Well, I'm gonna be totally honest, you guys. I still kind of like The Force Awakens. It has problems. Don't worry, I will do some complaining later on. But I think as a movie, there is just this undeniable charm to it that The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker didn't really replicate. And I think that all
Yeah,
comes down to the
I feel the
characters
same way, really.
and their chemistry. Rewatching this movie and really paying attention to elements that weren't just the water or how red it is
Alright,
really
thanks for
reminded me
lurking.
how refreshingly human it feels. The way Finn and Poe play off of each other in the TIE Fighter, or
Yeah.
how Finn and Rey interact and bond with each other as they escape Jakku, or how Finn and Han play off of each other. You know what? It's Finn. I think he might actually be the key ingredient that makes this movie so much better than the following two. I like Rey perfectly fine, but there is just something about Finn in this movie. This
Yeah.
former stormtrooper running from his past and breaking away from this evil regime, only to finally stop running and establish himself as
Yeah.
a true hero of the
Yeah, that's honestly how I feel about Finn too. In all honesty, Finn should have been the main character, not Rey. The story of a stormtrooper changing his ways and joining the light side, the good side, and then learning that he's potentially force sensitive too. I think it really should have been a story about Finn, not Rey. Yeah, that's the biggest problem. They just had no plan at all.
Resistance. It's pretty special, and it's made a lot better by how charismatic he is. He could be a bit too much of a goofball sometimes, like when he does that I'm in charge Phasma bit, I'm with Han on that one. Just bring it down. But overall, John Boyega brings this magnetic quality to the character that make all of his interactions with the others a real highlight to this film.
Yeah, I thought he had great chemistry.
I don't think The Last Jedi used him very well at all, but I already made a long-ass video on that movie. I kind of want to leave it out of this one as much as I can. Bottom line is, Finn is kind of the sleeper MVP of this one. I have some problems with the whole Stormtrooper backstory that I'll get to later, but he makes for a really engaging protagonist to follow. And I like Rey in this one. I'm not gonna try and convince you that she isn't a Mary Sue or whatever. I don't even know if people still say that, TBH. But honestly, paying close attention to everything she does in this film, I don't know. I bought all of it. She could fix the Falcon when Han couldn't because she knew about the changes Unkar Plutt made to it. She's a great pilot because she has the Force. That's why Luke blew up the Death Star and Anakin can pod race at 9 years old. She beat Kylo Ren
It's because of the Force.
because he was emotionally distraught from killing his dad, and he was bleeding out because a Sasquatch shot him in the abdomen. Everything checks out to me, dude. I don't know what to tell you. Her abilities don't really matter as much to me as her charisma, and I think Daisy Ridley really brings it here. I love the back and forths she has with Finn. I think they're such an inspired duo who really bring out the best in each other. I like seeing the mutual respect she and Han start to grow for each other, and I think
that's not how the Force works. Yeah, you say what about the characters, but yeah, the actors all mesh together pretty well. At least they're not unbearable to watch, right? That's what good chemistry is.
the seeds of her and Kylo's unique relationship are planted very well in the few
Kylo
scenes
Ren!
they get here. And Kylo, dude, he was kind of amazing from the start, honestly. For a movie devoid of new plot details, they really went ham with all the new and terrifying ways Kylo uses the Force.
Oh,
From
yeah.
stopping a blaster bolt in midair, to mind probing, to knocking Rey unconscious with it. And that's on top of what a unique character he is, as a young acolyte of the dark side who's still feeling the call to the light he left behind. That's
I
so
absolutely love him.
interesting. He's a really effective villain who's bolstered by the First Order surrounding him. This is the only movie in the trilogy that doesn't treat the main villainous faction as a joke. I still don't know why The Last Jedi decided to do that. I
Yeah.
mean, sure, real-life Nazis are kind of a joke, but I do want the space fascists to be a little bit intimidating in this fictional world.
Yeah, that was another problem I had with The Last Jedi. Like, it's like you can't turn your villains into a joke. It removes all their menace in any future scenes. It just absolutely ruins it. It's a problem so many people do. You know, they try to make their villains, you know, oh, they can't be too evil. We gotta lighten it a bit. Yeah, Disney needed the good guys to win, but didn't know how. So, you know, instead of conceiving a good plot, let's just make it as absolutely convoluted as possible. Make our villains so silly or so stupidly evil, you know, that, you know, even a kid could defeat them. It's like, no, you gotta treat your villains with a bit more respect. You know, give your hero something to fight against, not just the evil. My gosh, it's easy.
Snoke is intriguing and has a real sense of power behind him. Hux is deliriously effective when he gives his speech to the First Order before they fire the super weapon. Captain Phasma is... okay, you got me there. She's a complete joke in this one and the next one. Oh my god, what a terrible character. But the First Order as a whole
Phasma's
is
such a waste too,
sufficiently
man.
threatening and evil here. I think the opening scene is tremendously effective. Right from that first
Yeah.
shot of the Star Destroyer eclipsing an entire planet. The fact that this friendly old man character and this entire village are massacred before our eyes. It's nice to see the movie deciding not to pull punches right from the start. There are some jokes with the stormtroopers and a couple of funny edits, but they aren't
Yeah.
embarrassing, aside from Phasma. And while the main characters can sometimes act a
Yeah, I
little
think that
too
was pretty well
silly,
done with them,
it's
too.
usually a pretty fitting response to a stressful situation that doesn't feel out of place. Overall, I think the tone is immaculate in this film. They don't downplay any of the threats, yet they also manage to get plenty of great comedic bits that still make me laugh even 10 years later. That's the power of great, charismatic protagonists who also
Exactly.
have really touching connections to each other. Again, Finn and Rey go together so well. I find it so sweet when he pours his heart out to her at Maz's castle and mentions how she looked at him like no one else ever did. I didn't even necessarily need their bond to be explicitly romantic in the future films, because it's such a sweet
Yeah.
platonic friendship that I was consistently
Yeah, Yeah, and good solid friendships like that feel pretty rare, even in real life. It's hard to find someone that just gets you. Yeah, and I really like how they made Finn such a loyal character, to Poe and to Rey and stuff because they were kind to him despite his past and stuff. I don't know. I can't really remember, but I know, but yeah, I can't remember if these two ended up together. I think they went Raylo in the end, but like the worst way possible that I absolutely hated. Ugh.
Delighted by. And there's definitely a reason everyone started shipping Finn and Poe. It was all here right from the start. Their chemistry and the limited scenes
Solid
they share
bromance.
together is really something special. Okay, I talked a lot of shit about The Last Jedi already, so I really have to ask. With JJ back at the helm of Rise of Skywalker, how was the chemistry between the leads so flaccid in that movie? What even happened? Alright, back on track. While I do think this film has a lot of humanity to it, just in the way the performances play off of each other, part of me started to consider the more cynical angle as to why this is. It's no secret that The Force Awakens was explicitly designed to be the anti-prequel movie. This was meant to win over those Star Wars fans who were burned by the previous trilogy by bringing back everything that made the original trilogy so special, from practical effects to a simple Empire versus Rebellion story. And part of me
Yeah, I think they did it that way too. Because back in 2015, I think people still hated the prequels back then, right? I definitely remember that it wasn't until until like COVID maybe that people started to like the prequels. Oh, I know Pikachu's, but that's because you always had good taste. You always knew that the prequels were pretty good. Sure, they can't hold a candle to the original trilogy. Nothing can. Yeah, they still had a charm in their own way, but back in 2015, people didn't know that. Hating on the prequels was still like easy target back then. So it does make sense why The Force Awakened, that was their idea to make it as much as like the original trilogy as possible. To try and draw in people say, hey, look, we'll get it right this time, right? I wonder about that.
can't help but feel like that's where this movie's focus on the interpersonal relationships between witty, quippy characters came from. Maybe it sprung from a more business-oriented mindset to ensure that these films weren't seen as cold and inhuman and awkward, which were complaints levied at the prequels when they came out. Once I started thinking about that, I had trouble unseeing it. As much as The Force Awakens was obviously made with a clear passion for the original trilogy, it was also made with an equal level of disdain for the prequels. So much so that the idea of a New Republic doesn't even factor into the film at all. We blew up the New Republic, don't worry about it. It's the Empire versus Rebels again, just like you remember it. There are only passing references to concepts from the prequels, like Kylo saying Snoke should perhaps consider using a clone army. But for the most part, the movie goes out of its way to deny any sort of connection to the trilogy that released right before it. Which is fair enough in a narrative sense, because that era has long passed. But it's one of the elements of The Force Awakens, and the entire sequel trilogy, that is so odd in hindsight. Because nowadays, this brand is prequel palooza. As soon as Dave Filoni got more and more control at Lucas.
Yeah, it's pretty odd, isn't it? Only the first 6 films are absolutely canon, yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think the prequel trilogy didn't see much like love until like the Clone Wars cartoons, and then other Disney Plus shows that focus on like Ahsoka got her own show in Disney Plus, right? Yeah, as did Obi-Wan. So yeah, closer to COVID, the prequel started to get vindicated. I've never tried Knights of the Republic. I don't think I even own it, but it'd be fun to try it sometime, perhaps. I've heard that they're really, really good games.
Lucasfilm, and as soon as the higher-ups realized the kids who grew up with the prequels were the right age to be nostalgic for them now, that's kind of been the main focus of Star Wars nowadays. Original trilogy nostalgia is out, prequels and Clone Wars nostalgia are in. Obi-Wan show with Ewan McGregor, Ahsoka show with Hayden Christensen.
Yeah, that's what I talked about,
the Hutt from the Clone Wars movie in The Mandalorian and Grogu. Why the not? So to look back on the Disney Star Wars era before Disney Plus and all its corresponding shows launched, it almost feels like a bygone era of its own. It's genuinely so fascinating seeing how much contempt this trilogy, and specifically this movie, seemingly had for the prequels.
Yeah.
But hey, you know what? It's impossible to deny that this is what Star Wars needed at the time. It feels weird to say in 2025 when the prequels are more popular than ever, but the contempt people had for these things when they came out was unreal. I remember I was 7 years old and my dad was explaining the Oscars to me and how they crowned a certain movie Best Picture. And I remember saying, "Oh, I bet it's gonna be Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith." To which he said, "No, people didn't like that movie very much." This really shattered my worldview, and I was never the same after hearing it. Okay, quick tangent though. It's kind of insane that
That's just what I was saying. That the prequels only recently became vindicated. Yeah, it's hard to think of it's hard to think of it now, but yeah, back then, in 2015, 2014 and stuff. Yeah, people absolutely despised the prequels back then. Absolutely crazy. That's probably why this movie overcorrected so much, huh?
the prequels were nominated for original score, but all of the sequels were? In what fucking universe, bro? Even if you hated the movie, how is Revenge of the Sith score not awards worthy while the fucking Rise of Skywalker score is? Get real. But to be fair to The Force Awakens, I think it legitimately added some great new themes to the symphonic legacy of Star Wars. The March of the Resistance music is always cool to hear. Those 4 sinister notes that symbolize the arrival of Kylo Ren go very hard. And especially Rey's theme is just so beautiful and unique. I had never really heard anything like it in Star Wars, and it stuck out in my mind long after I had seen the film.
And they had really good music.
This is the
Absolutely
only
good
John
music.
Williams nomination for the sequel trilogy that was justified. Speaking of which, I also think it's really inspired that in addition to nominations for sound mixing, sound editing, and visual effects, this movie got into the best film editing category at the Oscars. Usually they just fill this category up with Best Picture nominees and call it a day, regardless of how actually special the editing was. But I'm really glad The Force Awakens got in here because this movie is so damn well edited.
It really
I know most
is.
people
It
don't
really
really pay
is.
attention to that sort of thing, but as a YouTube pooper, good editing is my jam. There's a great rhythm to the cuts here. From the way a door shutters, only to cut to another door opening in a seamless transition, to Kylo asking, "What, girl?" as sparks shoot out behind him, only for us to cut to Rey fixing the Falcon in a very precarious situation. The sharp, snappy edits really make the film feel even more alive. Plus,
Yeah, and the difference between good editing and bad editing can really save a film, right? And I'm still just now learning how to edit videos myself, and it's insanely hard. So yeah, this movie really did it right.
they even keep a few of the goofy PowerPoint transitions we've come to know and love in this series. I think this is my favorite Star Wars film in terms of its editing. Oh, sorry to spoil the eventual ranking on that dumb niche topic. But it's just so strong in that department. And that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of this movie's technical aspects. I'm just gonna say it. The Force Awakens is an extremely well-directed movie. Again, I promise I have issues with the plot and some of the characters that we'll get to. But I really wanted to get a lot of my praises out in the open since, I don't know, who else...
We can't complain
praise
to
this
it yet.
movie these
We're not
days.
in
As
there
a
yet.
film, I think J.J. Abrams did a tremendous job presenting the most tactile and realistic feeling cinematic view of the Star Wars universe to date. You could argue that Gareth Edwards one-upped him with Rogue One a year later. But at the time, it really struck me just how immersive this version of the Star Wars universe felt. When Finn and Poe steal a TIE fighter and Poe comments on how much it really moves, you can feel it through expert sound and production design, as well as through Oscar Isaac's reaction. Hell, the way he looks around at the hangar bay, or the blaster bolt Kylo is suspending in midair. It's nice to have the characters be amazed by something that's also amazing the audience. Every blaster bolt
Yeah, that's
fired,
true. You gotta be immersed
every
in the
ship
world.
shot down, every
If your
time
actors
a
aren't immersed,
lightsaber
you
is
don't have a really good
ignited,
film.
you just feel their power. I had never once considered the sheer unspeakable wonder of Chewie's bowcaster until I saw it fired in this movie. Part of the reason the iconic traitor fight Finn has is so memorable is because of how hard this guy's hits are. The way Rey is slammed against a tree by Kylo Ren, or how Finn's back is sliced up. You just feel it deep down because of how well the movie's effects sell it. Again, is this Disney's way of overcompensating for how fake a lot of people complain the prequels felt? Maybe, but I'm gonna be honest. Regardless of the intention,
I'm sorry for laughing. I can't see that stupid scene without thinking of that one meme. Uh, like if you know, you know. But sorry, I didn't mean to laugh out loud.
for how fake a lot of people complain the prequels felt? Maybe, but I'm gonna be honest. Regardless of the intentions behind the movie's tactile feel and the actor's wonderful charisma being potentially cynical and rooted in prequel disdain, the end result is so effective that I kinda don't mind. I love the look of the prequels in a lot of areas, and I appreciate how boundary pushing their visual effects were. But this version of Star Wars just feels richer and more immersive. Not the overall universe, mind you. The prequels mop the floor with this movie in terms of world building. But again, looking at things less from a Star Wars point of view and more from a filmmaking point of view, I'm still incredibly impressed with The Force Awakens. You can tell a lot of effort went into the presentation of this movie, and it visually holds up so much better than a lot of blockbusters that have come out since. So to answer the question posited by the video's title, yes, I do think The Force Awakens holds up somewhat, in the sense that it is an enjoyable and agreeable sci-fi spectacle, with a lot of personality to its characters and direction. But does that mean it remains the same magical experience it was back in December 2015, when we were all blown away by the magic of seeing our childhood heroes on the big screen again, in what felt like a blockbuster for the ages? No. To be fair, you might not have even thought that seeing the movie the first time. But that's certainly the vibe I got from my initial theatrical audience. People were invested, laughing, and clapping at every grand nostalgic moment. The opening crawl, the first appearance of Han and Chewie, 3PO, R2...
Yeah, I remember the first time that my mom and sisters watched this movie together. Pikachu's, you remember, right? Yeah. I didn't fully get it myself, but I absolutely love seeing the reaction of my mom and sisters. Yeah. Pikachu's and everyone else going, "Oh my god, that's Han! Oh my god, that's Leia!" You know? And oh, the opening crawl and oh, TIE Fighter. Me, I was like, mm, I didn't fully understand it myself at the time, but it was fascinating watching how other people who did grow up with it. I have a friend who's also big into Star Wars too, and he was blown away about it. Like he gabbed to me in the friend group for like hours talking about how great the film was and everything. Yeah, for what it was at the time, it was pretty amazing.
Luke, the Falcon. The applause for Carrie Fisher started out a little bit more hesitantly than everything else, which I thought was a bit rude. Maybe my audience didn't recognize her, I don't know, but after a slow start, she got the claps too. And it wasn't just the nostalgia, they even clapped at Starkiller Base getting destroyed, and especially when Rey used the Force to grab the lightsaber. I distinctly remember one guy shouting, "That's how you make a movie!" Honestly, after an entire decade of Rey discourse, it's kind of refreshing to look back on that memory. Even after seeing it in theaters, everyone was talking about this thing for at least a month.
We'll put the discourse aside for a second and focus on the hype,
trading
right?
theories as to who Rey's parents were, and daydreaming about what the great Luke Skywalker was gonna do next. The Force Awakens perfectly did its job capturing the cultural zeitgeist upon its release, which is why it's kind of depressing to look back and realize this movie wasn't exactly built to last. I think it's a really good, fun movie, but despite introducing a new generation of heroes and villains, it feels shockingly disposable in the modern context of the Star Wars saga. Yes,
unfortunately,
you waited long enough. I think it's finally time to talk about the aspects of The Force Awakens that I don't think hold up, and why I would not say it's as good as it was upon initial release. You know, I actually made a quick video on this movie back before media analysis became the focus of my channel.
Yeah, in this video I watched before too. Yeah, that's generally been the consensus of The Force Awakens, right? And you know, Pikachu's, that's true. You're right. You know, just because the other two movies didn't really have a plan, no plan at all. You know, that doesn't mean The Force Awakens. Yeah, it does feel a bit sad. Like why didn't you guys have a plan? You had a very solid foundation in The Force Awakens. It wasn't perfect, but it was still a very solid foundation. You had something to work with here. But you got sued who don't understand anything. Running movies and stuff these days. Probably captured the OG peeps, yeah, probably. And then maybe the unfortunate passing of Carrie Fisher, maybe that also threw a wrench into plans too. Because I remember reading once that they had like ideas for Leia in the sequel trilogy, but unfortunately she passed away, and they couldn't really bring her back in for acting, right? So that cut her side plot short. Just give her ideas to Luke. That's also a good idea. Why didn't they do that? Yeah, the way they handled Luke was especially frustrating. I really liked him. It's like, why did you write him like a total like I don't have the words for it, man. It's like, but like, bro, it's like it's like that's not Luke. That's not what Luke would do, man. Ugh, yeah, it's rough.
And I'm only starting to realize now that my thesis in 2025 is the same as it was in 2017. The Force Awakens is a great movie, but it's a bad sequel. Actually, I'm gonna demote it just a tad. It's a good movie and a bad sequel. See, I don't think I fully comprehended just how dire the implications of this film were for the greater Star Wars narrative. At the time, I kind of shrugged off the New Hope comparison because I liked the characters in this new film, and they made it feel fresh. But now,
Okay.
I kind of just have to face the facts and realize that The Force Awakens doomed the post-Return of the Jedi narrative. By presenting a universe 30 years later where everything was more or less the same as where we left off, we essentially closed this entire 30-year period off from making any meaningful changes to the status quo. What's gonna happen in that Ahsoka show with Grand Admiral Thrawn mounting a comeback for the Empire? Oh, it doesn't really matter. He'll be gone, Ahsoka will be gone, and the Empire will just come back in the form of the First Order since somehow Palpatine returned. It would be so
Oh, that's also frustrating too, isn't it? Oh, they were modeling him off of Obi-Wan and Yoda, who hid and ran as a defeat. Even if that's what they were going for with Luke, you could have handled it a little bit better, right? Well, not Kylo himself, but Snoke, right? It was Snoke. He like did like force airwaves to manipulate Kylo, right? But even if that's the case, you think that Leia would have been able to step in, right? I think that it should have been peace for 30 years. I think that's why everyone was like caught off guard by the New Order, because Snoke was like working in the background. Oh, well, sorry, not Snoke, but Palpatine, right? Palpatine was totally this whole time, this entire time. He was never gone. Blah 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 blah. Oh my gosh, what a mess. Hey, where are we on ads right now, really quick? 10 minutes to ads. We should have finished the film by then if I stopped yapping.
neat if there was some mystery as to what the state of the galaxy could look like following the era they're currently focusing on in the Disney Plus shows.
Yeah, that's also why it's hard to
But
make prequels
we
of
already
anything, isn't
know
it?
nothing much changes, and zombie Palpatine is behind it all. I know Palpatine returning isn't the fault of The Force Awakens, but those seeds would have never been sown if we could have done something a little more unique with this trilogy's conflict. Did it need stormtroopers? Did it need an Empire versus Rebels conflict again? We do have to look at this from the cynical shareholder perspective.
Oh,
where,
yeah, shareholders
hey, people
absolutely
liked
hate
the
them.
original trilogy and they didn't like the prequels. We need to make another original trilogy pronto. I'm not gonna act like that wasn't a smart business decision.
They had
at
the
time,
heir to the
even if,
Empire.
like I said,
Yeah.
the decision to completely shut the prequels out of this trilogy
Say your piece,
looks
Dire
more and
Wolfgang.
more
Say your
silly
piece.
with each
Say your
passing
piece.
year. But I think the cynical mindset present within the very conception of the sequels shows exactly why kids these days are flocking to the prequels in droves and leaving the sequels in the dust. The Force Awakens is just not a very imaginative movie. And I don't think
Yeah,
the
not very
first
imaginative.
installment of a brand new era of Star Wars stories really could have afforded to be that in hindsight. Now we forever have to deal with the knowledge that 30 years later, Han is still smuggling, Leia's still rebelling, Admiral Akbar is still Akbaring. We're not allowed to evolve these characters' roles because doing so is antithetical to the task of making a commercially viable, box office shattering, crowd pleasing Star Wars film. Whether you think he succeeded or not, you can't deny that Rian Johnson tried to evolve Luke as a character. And it was the most controversial choice in a long line of controversial choices for this series. So
Yeah.
again, The Force Awakens was the
You
smartest
could try,
kind of
but
movie
still
they
fail.
could have made in the short term.
Sure, we
I just
respect that
think
you
it's
tried,
responsible
but,
for this being the most
at the cost of
boring
butchering
and
Luke's
least
character?
fleshed out era of Star Wars.
Like,
to
I'd rather
date.
you stick to what's
And
familiar.
artistically, I just don't think it's helped Star Wars in the long run. We haven't really gotten any good stories that branched off from the sequel trilogy. Even if you don't love Rogue One, you absolutely have to give it credit for laying the groundwork for Andor to happen. The Clone Wars is the gift that keeps on giving.
And Rogue
with
One
so
was a
many
really great
projects
one.
being born from it, even if not all of them are great. The legacy of the sequel trilogy is nothing currently outside of the trilogy itself,
Absolutely right,
which
Pikachu.
consists
You're
of
absolutely right.
maybe the most universally hated Star Wars film there is, easily the most polarizing Star Wars film there is, and, you know, the one that nobody really has much to say about anymore. The Force Awakens. It exists. Okay. But does fan reception really matter that much? Does the impact it has on the franchise as a whole really mean anything?
Does it?
What about the movie itself? It's good. I like it. I said as much. Case closed, right? So remember how I said I thought this movie was great before, and now I demoted it to good?
Just
I'm
good?
gonna be honest, the third act of this movie does not hit anymore. On this rewatch, I thought it was a bit of a chore. It was shallow and pedantic. The Force Awakens is a movie that gradually gets worse the longer it goes on. I think the first act does a great job of introducing its characters and their dynamics, largely because it's completely allowed to focus on them. Aside from the concept of a droid with a thing that needs to get to the rebellion who's now on a desert planet, this is the part of the
BB-8
movie
is
that
very
almost
cute. BB-8 is
entirely
very cute.
feels like its own thing. A true, new Star Wars film. And the second act is pretty good. I think Han and Chewie are well implemented. I like how they play off of Finn and Rey. And I especially think it was smart to only focus on them for a bit, instead of throwing in a bunch of returning faces. This movie makes great use of Han Solo, without making it feel like he's taking away from our new protagonists. Then we go to a new cantina, and we see a new Death Star blow up a new planet, and I don't want to say the third act of this movie is bad. It's still cute, pulpy fun. But it is very been there, done that. The entire space battle is just kind of white noise, with the infiltration of Starkiller kind of just being more of the same, and the lightsaber duel being...
Yeah, that's true. If a movie starts off great, but then its sequels are bad, it does tend to color the perception of the first movie a bit more, huh? It sucks when a great movie has a poor sequel, because you're thinking, everything they fought for led up to this garbage? Really? It's rough, isn't it?
Perfectly fine. I'm not asking for prequel level choreography or anything, but it does kind of pale in comparison to the more psychological aspects of the original trilogy duels. Now, the third act kind of lucked out, because it does contain the best scene in the movie, in between all this standard stuff. I think the moment where Han confronts his son and is subsequently killed is genuinely tremendous. I talked about it a bit in my jokey joke shitpost video about the color red, but the lighting here when Kylo is torn between the dark and the light sides, and you can see it on his face, sublime. We're also given a throwaway line.
Your cinema too. I really love that. Yeah, I absolutely love that scene too. Like, I feel it was done very well.
Earlier about how when the sun goes down, the weapon is fully charged. And it looks like Kylo might actually go with his father. But then, wouldn't you know it, the sun goes down.
It's all
Without
red.
any words, you understand that the dark, the allure of power, is beckoning to him. So he kills his father. Honestly, I was alright with this since I felt the movie gave me all I needed of an older Han Solo. It was a powerful send-off to a character who finally decided to stop running, and a good indication that the younger generation can pick up the conflict from here. Oh yes, sorry, I forgot, this is the negative section of the video. Yeah, that's the one standout part in this third act. The rest is just Star Wars. And for a movie that genuinely started out feeling so fresh and unique in that first act, it's a bit disappointing. It feels a little bit like the movie considers the compelling, wordless portrait of Rey's miserable life on Jakku to be the vegetables you have to eat before you get to the yummy dessert that is C-3PO and his red
That's a good
arm.
analogy right
but
there.
does that mean the first two acts of this movie are flawless? Oh, absolutely not. As much as I praised Finn's character earlier, I feel like the whole reformed stormtrooper angle really isn't fleshed out as well as it could have been, especially in regards to how he treats his fellow troopers as the movie goes on. Remember, his initial motivation for turning good is that one of his comrades dies right in front of him. What's he doing going around mercilessly shooting these other stormtroopers? Just stabbing one in the fucking chest with a lightsaber without a second thought. I was rewatching K-pop Demon Hunters the other day, as you do. And I saw that scene where Rumi is going through a crisis of faith. So she starts questioning one of the demons and asking if he's a prisoner too. And I was like, hey, how come Finn never did that even once in this movie? I know they're in a lot of high-stake battles.
Yeah, you think he could have had a bit more compassion for his fellow stormtroopers, and maybe you can make the argument, oh, taking them out is the mercy. Now they're not a slave anymore. It's like still, you couldn't like pull them over to their side, pull more stormtroopers over, spare more of them, and say, you don't have to do this anymore. Be like Finn. They're 100% brainwashed. Well, if Finn can break the programming, why can't they, right? I don't know how stormtrooper brainwashing works. I think you see, I'm not a big Star Wars fan myself, so I don't know. But still, I think they're right. He could have afforded him a bit more mercy.
Situations, but theoretically, any one of these troops could be another Finn. Someone who just needs a little nudge to break away from their programming and turn to the light side. But that's complicated and it'll take a while, so let's just kill them all. Fuck it, why not? I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Would it have been so hard for him to just talk
channel
to a
inner Dimitri
stormtrooper at any point? Ask them why they're doing this? The brainwashing
like
can't have
see
been
something
that
like
strong,
that.
considering Finn just acts like a normal, goofy dude the whole time. I wouldn't say they bit off more than they could chew with this whole child soldier stormtrooper concept. It's more like they shoved it down their throat without even attempting to chew it once. I also think the explanation of how they got Poe out of the narrative without killing him off is really odd and flimsy, obviously stemming from a last-minute decision to not kill him off. The movie is generally pretty
It's too cute
funny,
to
but
kill off.
some jokes just don't land. With that, who talks first? You talk first, I talk
That was
first,
very
thing
Marvel-y,
Poe
yeah.
does, being a pretty early low point. One scene that I was
Yeah, that was
especially
painfully
struck by
Marvel.
how bad the writing was in is the scene where Han and Leia talk about losing Ben to the dark side and what they did in the years since. It's so expository and unnatural. It feels like they're saying this stuff to people who don't actually know what happened. And then Leia chimes in with, "It was Snoke. He seduced our son to the dark side." I don't know, that just sounds like a prequel line to me. It comes across as really silly hearing the name Snoke come out of Leia's mouth. Like, how is she on a first name basis with this guy? There are other small details
that name's
here
not very
and there I could
intimidating
talk about,
either.
like, why did they bring BB-8 into the...
Oh, whoa. Oh, Finn was able to break his brainwashing because he's force sensitive? Oh, same as Jana. Oh, so he just got lucky and has the midichlorians to resist deep brainwashing. I didn't know that. Okay. Fine, fair enough, but still.
castle instead of just leaving him on the ship. But I don't really want to be one of those YouTubers who complains about every little thing, like how Han forgot his keys in the Falcon or whatever. I think when we're looking at the big picture of The Force Awakens, it's an enjoyable, if notably flawed, film in its own right that really worked at the time it came out, and still manages to be a pretty fun watch to this day. You might be wondering if I think the mystery box elements in this movie, being paid off by all that bullshit The Rise of Skywalker cooked up, means that this film is now soured as a result. But I think it still works in spite of that. The mystery is kind of just the icing here.
Yeah.
It's still a self-contained movie with a beginning, middle, and end that just leaves opportunities for certain questions to be answered in the future. Yippee! But ultimately, while the current legacy of The Force Awakens is generally one of indifference, who's to say its reception won't change and evolve in the future? I mean,
That's
if the
true.
prequels can get redeemed, anything can happen. I know it seems unlikely now, but those kids who grew up on the sequel trilogy are gonna be of age and ready to make YouTube videos on why their childhood Star Wars movies are cinematic masterpieces soon enough. Or they could also turn out to be prequel fans, who knows. Anyway, I guess that's about it. Suppose I'll see you in another 10 years to see how well and or poorly this film holds up then. I'm not talking about The Last Jedi for its 10-year anniversary. We're done with that one. Same goes for The Rise of Glup Shido Walker, whatever. Maybe. We'll see. Good night, Tri-State Galaxy.
Yeah, I think that was a good one for discussion, wasn't it? Yeah. Well, I think that was a really good, insightful film to watch. Yeah, I've watched a similar one from 10 years ago, and yeah, overall, yeah, my opinion on The Force Awakens remains the same too. About certainly not a bad film by any means, but for what it was pretty good. Not perfect, but yeah. And Wolf, what are you saying here? I wish they leaned into the ridiculous name. Yeah, I mean Snoke could work as a villain name if they didn't turn to if they oh my god. Ugh. I'm trying to think of that ridiculous outfit they had him wearing in a second. It's bad writing. Oh my goodness gravy. Yeah, but that's a really good one. Here, let me link y'all the video here before I forget again. See. Alright. Make sure to like the video yourself. Give it a like. Give it a watch. A comment, a view. Because I think it's a really good setup for discussion there.